Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome to the Ryan Magic Show. Today, I'm super excited because I have my guitar teacher, friend, Kirtan instructor, Sun Hyland, coming to join us today. And Sun has a mission to support people to realize that they can access music, song, and voice, no matter what their level of singing quality is, and does that mainly through Kirtan, but also teaching singing and teaching guitar and teaching harmonium, and bringing people together through song and resonance and connecting them to spirit through that. And you taught me maybe 3-4 years ago to play the guitar, which was awesome. Yeah. But Sun's really renowned in the Melbourne community and further than that, but Melbourne Victorian Kirtan community as a real leader in this space. And so I'm super excited to have you on, Sun, to talk about the theory behind Kirtan. And for everyone listening, we're going to introduce this as a concept for you to try on. And if you haven't been exposed to Kirtan and sound healing, and if you have been, we're going to dive deeper into the theory behind it, as well as exploring Sun's journey on his path of spirituality and connection and resonance with chanting and Kirtan. So thanks so much for jumping on, man.
It's fantastic to be here. I'm excited too, Ryan.
Awesome.
I love your energy. And as you know, I love talking about Kirtan, chanting, mantra, music, etc.
Yeah.
And its power.
Well, one thing I really respect about you in terms of the way that you facilitate Kirtans, because I've attended heaps of your Kirtans and they're always rocking. But I love the way that you hold space with a sense of deep reverence for the functionality of Kirtan, even though you doll it up and modernize it and make it fun and sound nice for people. I know that the thing that is most important, this is my perception, at least through being your student, is that the actual effects of Kirtan connecting people back to helping them feel better by connecting with the divine through song is like something that you hold very close to your heart. And I appreciate it. Isn't your tagline songs from the heart?
Songs from the heart, yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because it's a heart-centered practice. The idea is to bring people into their heart. And there's many levels to how we do that. But yeah, I'm grateful that you can see the effort I put into creating a space that it's all about making it effortless for people to sing and making it effortless for them to come into the moment.
Could you quickly set context for people who don't know what Kirtan is into just the normal, obviously there's no exact normal, but just the general, someone was to look up on Eventbrite, wherever they are in the world, and just click, oh, there's a Kirtan on. And they click that, what is it? What is it generally? And how do you frame that? Yeah.
Yeah. What the heck is Kirtan? Kirtan is the practice of singing together. Kirtan actually means storytelling, and it comes from the Indian yogic tradition, but you don't have to sing in Sanskrit or Hindi or any of the Indian languages. I've got one student at the moment who's writing Kirtans in Hebrew. You can do them in English. I love doing the traditional Indian Kirtan songs and mantras because they have these beautiful words, these beautiful sounds like Sarasvati, Shiva. So I focus mainly on those. And all we do, the way I do it, I sing a mantra and you sing the mantra back to me. And we do this back and forth. It's a bit like a mixture between karaoke and meditation. You're singing these words, which may not be familiar to do that. They may have a lot of meaning, or they may just be sounds to you. You don't have to have an association with the culture. And we sing and we repeat this singing. We repeat the mantra over and over and over. And eventually through this combination of repetition and the rhythm building, we can drop into a sort of a trance-like state. And in that state, it's not, necessarily very cosmic, although it can be, but it is very embodied. You're really in your body. You're really in the moment. And nothing else matters in the world. And the thing is, that is a big deal for some people because most of us spend most of our time up here.
In our head.
And to drop out of the head and into the heart, even just for a moment, is so powerful. So, of course, I could go on. Most of the time there's a guitar, maybe drums. A lot of the time there's this instrument called the harmonium, which is like a hand-powered little organ. But I always say you can do kirtan with 2 sticks. It's all about the voice. It's all about the breath. And it's all about vibration.
Beautifully said. And so, yeah, when I go to your ones that are run at Center of You, the local spiritual community center, oftentimes there are 50, 70 people in the audience, and the whole sound and the resonance of the sounds and the mantra create this, like what you just said, like dropping from the head to the heart, and you can't think of anything else. It brings us so much into the present moment. And I feel like the whole energy is super dense in the space. It's like visceral, like you could cut the air with a knife. It's just so intense.
I often feel like it's at the end, there's like this energy there that we've created that you can sort of breathe in because it's so thick. And that is a big part of it. Like if it's just me singing, that might be nice if you enjoy, and me playing guitar, but you singing with a group of others creates this very unique resonance. It's like a field that is created, a field of sound and vibration that is so much more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, beautiful. And you referred to the fact that you prefer to sing kirtan mainly through Sanskrit, which is the yogic language, the Indian language. And I know from studying some Sanskrit that it's like onomatopoeic, which means that each word sounds like what it is. It's different. Like, whereas there's heaps of languages around the world, but there's very few that are onomatopoeic, which means like when you say it, a lot of the time I've been in rooms where it's been taught and the teacher will say, close your eyes and just listen to me say it and guess what it means. And oftentimes people can guess. I remember guessing them. It's like, how would I guess that? I've never heard this random word like maitri. How would I guess what that means?
Yes. Yeah. And those, when I refer to like mantras being a collection of powerful sounds, like they have, take the word Saraswati, for example. It refers to the goddess of music and dance and song and wisdom. But it has these powerful sounds. Sa, ras, wa, ti. Now, each of those sounds have a different effect on the physiology. They have a different energetic sort of nature. And I always recall the story of one of my friends saying they were having a discussion going, I don't like singing these religious, the names of these gods. I don't know who these gods are. And a friend who was standing there, he said, those sounds existed in nature before people came along and sort of gave them meaning or sort of tried to own those sounds and say they were part of this religion, etc. So those sounds are universal. I always think of the sound ma. You just sing ma. Now everyone can feel the energy of that sound, right? It's universal.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so we don't have to think of the meaning of the mantras at all, although they are very interesting. And I do like to sort of give a nod and respect to the Indian and yogic cultures that came before always. But when we're actually in it singing, we're not thinking about where it came from. We're not thinking about an institution or a religion. We're just in the moment feeling.
So I'd love for you to share some of the utilities with the listeners / viewers of how kirtan can be used in someone's lifestyle. Because I know you can look up an event, and if you're new to kirtan, I highly recommend just going to any spiritual centers, and you'll probably see in the schedule of a given month that there'll be 1 or 2 kirtan workshops, or you can type it in and just search in Kirtan Melbourne or Kirtan Sydney or Kirtan New York, and they will pop up as events that you can go to. But I'm curious to know for you, son, like in your lifestyle, or for other, in your lifestyle, where do you use kirtan sound music to support yourself to live a better life?
It's very timely of you asking, because I've been spending the last few weeks writing a list of the 10 things that I love about kirtan. So, which I have here, but I'm going to refer to it more succinctly in regards to my experience, as you've asked. And I think the number one benefit for me of doing kirtan is the release of tension. Now, when I first started singing kirtan, I came from a sort of conventional music background, and I think I mistook it for a bit of a performance. I had a sense that it was this meditative practice, but I sort of wanted to rock out and get everyone singing. And it was lots of fun, but I was missing a subtlety to it, which was the potential for it to allow this release. And in order to be a good kirtan leader or to run a good kirtan workshop, I have to be able to experience that myself. So, and this is, I'm always talking to my students about this, we can't sort of be thinking and planning we need to be in the moment as well to offer this experience. So number one thing for me is that physical release of tension that comes largely because you're breathing very deeply, but it also comes from the resonance that helps change our brainwave patterns when we sing this, when we're surrounded by these beautiful sounds. And there are other benefits that I definitely experience, which is...
Before you go into that, sorry to cut you off, Kit.
That's all right.
When you said it can drop you, it changes the brain waves. Do you know much about that? Like what brain waves?
Well,
it's okay if you don't. I'm just curious.
Yeah, no. Well, the way I understand it is there's the brainwave patterns that are in the meditative state. I can't remember the technical terminology, but we go from our normal state into this meditative state. And that can actually be quite hard to do by just sitting quietly and meditating, as I'm sure you've experienced. Meditating quietly by yourself, it's hard to drop into a state of complete presence. But doing it via kirtan, it's like cheating. You sing together and the group helps you to drop into this meditative state, which means our brainwave pattern is more regulated. And it's like my partner always says, she says, it's more fun. It's easier than yoga and more fun than meditation. But you get the same benefits.
That's really
just by sitting and singing.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you told me, and kirtan's like a preparation for meditation in its purest function as well as breath work, as well as yoga. Like these practices are designed, as the way I understand it, to prepare our body, mind, and spirit to be ready to access greater connection to oneness or the divine.
Most definitely. And I feel that the ultimate goal is to be able to drop into this meditative state without any prop or any mantra or any external thing. So, and I know Vipassana meditation largely focuses on that. We're just using our breath. But more and more, I lean into the idea that for me, the meditative state I find through kirtan is good enough. It's good enough for the householder, for the average person. It can be very difficult. I mean, I've got 2 young children and a very full working life, and finding time to meditate is one thing, but I weekly get to drop into that meditative state through doing kirtan with my students, with groups, and I feel the benefits. I feel like I'm meditating like every day. So yeah, of course, that is not to dismiss the fact that ultimately we could be sitting quietly for an hour or two a day and finding it through that. But
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
if you can't, just come to Kirtan.
Yeah. Well, I find when you've run kirtans, the intentional pauses that you place in certain aspects occasionally in between a song, during a song, but then also between songs and after the entire performance, there's this like desire to hold that feeling. It's involuntary. Like what you said, it's funner than easier than yoga, funner than meditation. Before kirtan, I would find it difficult as well to want to, because my ego is trying to pull me into the physical, to want to sit and go more into the intangible, to the unmanifest. It's really difficult. But then it's actually hard not to go into that place. Like it's difficult to take myself out of a state of stillness after kirtan. It's like I just want to bathe in that space that gets created.
I always find it challenging in a modern kirtan setting. Like the kirtan ends and we have to get in our cars and go home. And ultimately, it'd be great if we could just stay there for an hour or two.
Yeah.
And be in that state. And I've recently run an event here in my little studio where we did more of that. We did kirtan and then we just stayed for like 10, 15 minutes with some subtle sound going, just so you could really feel into that subtle, connected, deep meditative state.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
But you can do that when if you practice at home, and I know some people do that. They might do a little movement practice, a bit of chanting, and then either do shavasana lying down, or sit and meditate.
So I first learned, and the reason I was pulled to learn from you is because I wanted to learn the guitar for kirtan. I didn't want to learn the guitar to learn random songs. Kirtan was what pulled me to, I would like some kind of like bassline instrument, because I'd had an experience with Richard and Alisa, who I know that you know as well, where they would facilitate little mini kirtans and sing kirtan music at home. And so I would be hanging out with both of them and just the three of us, or if I wasn't there, just the two of them. And if one of them wasn't there, then just one of them would sing kirtan with themselves and just repeat the mantras over and over and create an effect like that. And I felt the effect so positively for me. And that state was created so easily, and it felt so fun as well, and so beautiful and light. Such an amazing use of time versus watching a movie. Nothing against movies, but something to slot into the options that I could do at home. And I was like, I want to get on this and in this, and I want to be able to experience this if other people who lead it aren't there, and it's just me. And I want to be able to create this for myself and my friends. And I'm curious, do you practice it at home, or do you recommend? What are your kind of recommendations about people being able to utilize kirtan without the event?
Well, I have to say personally, I get to spend around about 15 hours a week, either with students or actually with an event. So I don't necessarily need to I get so much. I'm very, very lucky, but that being said, the most incredible application of kirtan for me has been in the birth of my two children, where my partner, she just connected with a mantra, and it was the theme song of the practice. And for those of you who've
of the actual birth.
Of the actual birth, but also leading up to it, my partner decided she could play the harmonium and started playing a song on it. Like, it was uncanny. And throughout the last birth, the birth of Remy, my son, we had this mantra we were singing over and over. And at one point, because the contractions were really heavy, I kept picking up the guitar and then I had to put it down because I had to hold my partner. And the doctor picked up my guitar, the doctor, and said, "What are the chords?" and started playing the song. And then the doctor and the two midwives, they were all singing because they totally got that it was really helping. It was helping with you can imagine the amount of tension. I mean, actually, as men, it's hard to even imagine the amount of tension you're holding in the body and working with in giving birth. And the mantra just gave us all something to sort of connect to. And so that's an extreme example of how you can use
that's wild that,
life, right?
That's wild that the doctor picked up the guitar.
I know that was not expected. I have to say, she's an amazing doctor. We've found out more about her recently, and she's really, really wonderful. But using it in daily life, I have been working with students recently where I've done this, call it the vocal yoga program, which is just like using some yogic practices to help people sort of forget about this idea that they can't sing and just finding something that they can sing that is a mantra. And they can use this, most commonly, they will use it to help with sleep and stress, like at the end of the day. That is, rather than sort of using it as a social sort of enjoyment thing, in this case, it's turned out that what people really need is just something to help them relax, help them wind down. It's like, instead of turning on the screen, you turn on the recording and sing along with it. So that, I think it's really, really helpful with release of anxiety and helping with stress. Of course, it doesn't solve everything. It's a tool that you'd have in your toolkit. And then there's another level where if you're a musician or you're even a fledgling musician like you were, is there's no rules to how a kirtan goes. So you can play it slow, you can play it fast, you can play it whatever is the necessary way whatever reflects your energy and your state and what you need to express in that moment. So even though the mantras are very simple, I find it incredibly creative and a real outlet that I can get on my guitar, on my harmonium, or not even on anything, and just sing from the heart. And I write a lot of stuff that way, but also a lot of that stuff I don't record it or write it down. It just comes out and it just feels good.
And for anyone that doesn't really have an idea of what this is like, you can just Google YouTube. Just go into YouTube and just type in kirtan performance.
Yeah, and I suppose I would recommend, Janavi Harrison would be one of the first ones I go to, and of course Krishna Das, the great Krishna Das, the father of Western kirtan. There's Deva Pramal, Ajit. Just find a playlist and see what you like.
Amazing. We'll chuck those artists in the show notes as well for people to check out. Yeah, cool. Yeah, cool. And so when you say it's really good for people that have that idea that they don't have a good singing voice, what aspect of that, putting on some background music or putting a kirtan on and singing along to it, I'd love for you to speak more to that. Yeah.
So I'm going to backtrack that a little bit to just the idea that people have an idea that they can't sing, where in my experience, everyone I've worked with can sing, and tone deafness, or the inability to recognize tone, is extremely rare. But what's happened is something has happened that's made that person believe that they can't sing. That may be a deeply ingrained belief, or it might just be a casual, they just never really tried it. And what they need to do is be given the right tools to help them to sing. And so when I just it can be a bit of a process for some people. Learning to recognize pitch and tone can be very challenging, especially if they've got a deeply ingrained belief that they can't do that. But using mantra is that, think of it the simplest way. So you find one note, you find the middle of their comfortable range, and you just get them to sing that note. And initially you'll be saying, okay, D, and they'll be like, they'll be all over the place. But if you give them something to resonate to, a recording of another voice a harmonium, a guitar, these things that their voice can resonate to, eventually their voice will start to match. It's to do with resonance, especially when you put headphones on, you're actually creating vibrations going to the head, and then you're creating vibrations in here in your resonant chamber.
Mm.
And waves like to come together. You got these disparate waves. They like to find balance.
Point. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and don't get me wrong, that can be a challenging thing for people to do, but I've seen it again and again where people find a note hard, find it difficult to recognize the note, and just with a bit of practice, they find a note, and then they find 2 notes, and then they find 3, and they might be able to sing something like Mahadevi. It's just very, very simple. It's 3 notes. Now, if you were to say to them, sing, trying to think of a Beatles song. Get back to where you once belong. Get back. Now, that's cool, and they probably recognized it, but it's got these English words. It has this meaning, and it starts to bring the head into play.
Mm.
And also you think, because that song is so familiar, well, to a lot of people, they think it's supposed to sound a certain way.
Oh.
Right? And so they're striving to sound like Paul McCartney.
Mm.
And they're never going to, and that's fine. But with a mantra, they can sound however they like.
Mm.
There's no set pitch. There's no set timing. They can find a way of singing it that feels resonant to them.
Mm.
And that can be a really, really life-changing experience, honestly, for some people, to just suddenly or gradually enjoy the sound of their own voice. Or more than that, enjoy the sensation of the vibration that they are creating with their voice.
Mm.
And it blows people away.
Mm. That's really beautiful, son. I feel like everyone enjoys singing when no one's around and there's no fear of how they sound. Like myself included, I've had a massive and still don't feel fully reconciled with it, kind of like judgment of my own voice. But everyone, like people, if they knew that 100% guaranteed no one could hear what they sounded like, people start singing. Everyone in every culture and every lineage around the world sing. And dance is another thing that's consistent, but singing is like globally recognized.
I think we're at an interesting time in culture, though, because these things happen, right? There's this idea of what a really good singer is promoted through popular culture. And until about 60, 70 years ago, access to recordings of that was quite limited.
Mm.
Even 20 years ago, we didn't have the on-demand like we have now.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, you've got these people up here who they're the good singers, and we're just the normal people down here.
Yeah.
And the comparison gap has just grown and grown.
Mm.
And that has really affected the way people feel about their voice. And they're comparing themselves to these highly trained, incredible singers.
Mm.
And they're comparing through this one-dimensional sort of listening. And really the value of singing is in the enjoyment and in how it's received by the listener, not how it compares to Mariah Carey or Harry Styles or whoever, Yeah. And that's affected people a lot in terms of how they might sing, like you say, by themselves, but they wouldn't do it in front of people because they don't think they're good enough. Where you go to Africa, to an African village, they don't have a choice. They have to sing. It's part of the culture. Everyone's got a note that they have to sing in the choir.
from every piece of footage and experience and exposure to tribes that I've had, it's never been like a chore or anything negative either. It's like they have to sing.
Yeah.
It's like it's a way to feel joy.
It's a way of life. And we, to a certain extent, have stifled that and removed singing as a commodity. And it's been commodified and judged. But that doesn't mean it's not accessible. And you can tell by the proliferation of karaoke, choirs. A lot of people recognize that singing can be of great value.
Yeah.
And they seek it out.
Yeah.
Church.
That's what I was thinking as you were sharing before it became more globalized and accessible, people would just do it because they didn't have as much of a contrasted understanding of what the best of the best was and less material for comparison. Church was something that came to mind.
Yeah, well, I certainly grew up just singing in church and listening to vinyl records. And I didn't see the difference. I thought we were all, those people on the records were just like me. And then the superstar sort of thing started to happen, and it changed a lot over time. And that's, singing in church as a part of culture has really changed as well,
I'm curious to know because most of the people that are listening to this are kind of like me, where I'm obsessed with growth. Part of that comes from a healthy place, part of it from an unhealthy place. But nevertheless, I love personal development, want to grow, find new ways to grow. For the people that are listening to this that share in that value, what do you perceive as the opportunity that's there for people that may never have identified as someone that can sing, or probably more accurately, they've identified as someone that can't sing, in just opening to the opportunity of incorporating it into their lifestyle? Like, what do you see as the way that could impact them as a person, their life? Curious.
I see I see the thing that you're talking about all the time, and it's about your ability to communicate. It's about your ability to use your voice. And by voice, I mean in the physical sense and also in the metaphoric sense. Because if we can express ourselves more clearly, then we can have more impact. And the way that when we have that confidence in the use of our vocal mechanism, we can do more with it. And in a sense, we can be more convincing. And I don't mean that in a sort of scary way. I just mean we can get our message across through our expression. Now, I see there's lots of other, if you're talking specifically about Kirtan, then also finding your center, finding that quiet, still place, the place beyond ideas and beyond the mind, is incredibly powerful, because that's the source where all the best ideas come from. So that's another layer that's getting more into the kirtan, but purely working with the voice. And I say I've got a lot of students who are yoga teachers, and they come back and they're like, I just feel like I have more of an impact on a room now because their voice. And you see it, most people who aren't singers, they don't open their mouth as much and they don't use as much breath when they're singing it, and there's not as much nuance in their articulation. You start to sing, and in a sense the sung voice is an exaggeration of your speaking voice. They're very connected. So you start to sing and then they affect each other.
Yeah. So you really perceive that if someone's able to work on their singing voice and feeling connected to their heart and more confident and self-assured, then the way that they project their voice as like a speaker or to their friends or when they communicate in any setting is amplified.
Yes. And I think one of the most key aspects of that, it's not about sort of being louder or being more sort of sounding clearer. It's about there's more emotion conveyed in your voice. And the most powerful singers, you look at them, they look sad, they look forlorn, they look joyful, they look amazed. They're communicating that through the sound of their voice. And you can do the same thing when you're speaking. The difference between saying, don't do that, and don't do that.
I feel like
one's devoid and one's got emotion, one's saying something else besides the words.
I feel like this is almost, even for me listening to this, there's like so much power in the subtlety of this and the nuance of this, but I don't think it's something that many people think about. The idea of it being a powerful opportunity for someone in their life to be more authentically expressed, and how that could positively impact their life. Like, I doubt many people walking around going, how do I communicate with more emotion? I feel like people are just walking around going, how do I get a better job? How do I find my girlfriend? How do I solve this conflict? But it's true. Like, I feel it. I feel what you're saying.
Yeah, and my own experience of it has definitely been, I mean, I used to play in bands and did a lot of music for a long time. Did musicals and all sorts of different music. But when I started doing this, I had to sing and be embodied at the same time. Right? I had to be not sort of trying to be someone. The only person I can be when I'm doing kirtan is me. And that really helped me to then find my voice when I'm teaching workshops, when I'm working with groups. My confidence has just grown and grown. You know, in that, it's not even, don't even think of it as confidence now. It's just comfort. It's just a natural state that I get into where I can share my words and thoughts.
That's so powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
And it's really supported by my singing, and the more singing I do, the more I feel it. Yeah.
So if someone's out there right now and they're in the world and they feel like they're not as confident at expressing themselves or comfortable to express themselves, or they're softly spoken, or they fall into the category of being like a pleaser, then singing is an opportunity to start to find a way to feel safe to fully express themselves.
Oh, I think definitely. I mean, of course, you want to be very wary of the very sort of technical singing, which there's a real risk of that shutting you down when you're trying to strive to be something that is beyond your grasp or something way in the future. But there's a real movement these days for singing to be about being embodied. You know, I think they move more and more away from the technical more and more away from the technical and coming towards this idea of singing from the heart and singing with the whole body and singing with the breath.
So that's what you're speaking more specifically to. It's speaking to singing like kirtan or medicine music or sound, singing from a place of feeling for your own enjoyment and state.
Yeah. But I have to say, a lot of the modern vocal coach sort of movement leans towards that as well. You don't necessarily have to be in the conscious world to come across that sort of stuff now, which is really good.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I've got a teacher in Melbourne, Carly Mills, and she really helped me. What's the best warm-ups you can do? And she's like, do 15 minutes of yoga before you start singing.
Yeah.
Like, get into your body and you feel the whole mechanism that you're going to sing with, and you start to realize you've got access to this, and you don't just talk with your mouth.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious to know what's exciting you most at the moment about the work that you do in the world. Like, I know for me as a speaker and a coach, there's like always ideas that I'm flirting with in my mind that I'm excited about. And I'm curious to know like what you've been curious about recently or thinking about more in your own kind of way that you use kirtan and stuff.
I feel like there's sort of several frontiers that I'm working on at the moment. Definitely, I used to find it a little bit challenging to answer the question, like, what are the benefits of kirtan? You know, I sort of wanted to say to people, just experience it. I can't explain it. You know, but then I've realized that no, it can be explained. And so something really important here for me is I want to get a whole lot of people who think that kirtan is weird, who think that it's not something they would do, who think that singing is unattainable or that they're not Hindu, etc. I want to get those people to try it. And if I can get them to sort of drop their superficial understanding of it and actually go, this is a practice that's good for the vagus nerve. It's very popular at the moment. This is a practice that will help you to release tension. This will help you sleep. This will help you with anxiety. I want to get that message across to people and get people to try it. And, you know, as you can imagine, a lot of my events, the people are the same sort of conscious community. Yeah. You know, they're coming and they're very open-minded and they heard about kirtan. They maybe stumbled across it in Bali or Thailand or somewhere. But then I do get these people who just like, oh, I saw this thing. Sounded interesting, so I thought I'd give it a try. And they're like blown away. They're like at the end of the night going, what just happened? Explain it to me. And I like often say to them, listen, let's have a chat, you know, just calm down and we'll have a chat during the week, you know, give us a call or something. And then they come to events and it's something that's completely foreign to them. And then suddenly they've done it once and it's transformed their life. It's given them a doorway into meaning and presence that they couldn't find through meditation or yoga or through other pathways. So that's what I'm more and more leaning into about getting my message out there to the unconverted. Not that you have to convert to anything to do kirtan. In fact, there's nothing to believe, there's nothing to understand, and there's nothing to learn. Unless you're really interested. Son's
just trying to fool you all. He actually has a cult in Castlemaine. So he's just trying to convert everyone to the cult.
Come to the ashram.
Definitely don't.
Only give me half your money. That's the thing to point out too, is that I'm completely non-religious. In fact, I don't really follow a particular spiritual path, although I'm very, very inspired and influenced by Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, yoga in particular. But a lot of people think I have to be a Hare Krishna to do this. They assume that. But this practice is for everyone.
Well, that was a really innocent example where you share that someone that's had less exposure to the conscious community can receive more of a transmission because it's more of a difference to normal life in society or common life in society. And I really feel that. I feel the beauty of that.
Yeah, it's really lovely.
Yeah. I'm curious to know how you got into all of this work. Like, how did you find kirtan originally and what inspired you to start to make it your living? Like, how'd you do that?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. I feel like it came at me a few times over the years trying to get me, you know. trying to say, hey, come over here. This will be great for you, you know. I first at university went to a 30 years ago, went to a chanting by the Ananda Magis. They have this Babanam Kevalam, and I was like, wow, that's cool. And, but I was into rock and roll. I was into punk, and I was into hardcore, and I was into all this sort of stuff.
I wish I'd met you at that point so I could experience like you in that energy.
There's a bunch of people that want to do like a Tool inspired hardcore kirtan, so you never know.
Awesome.
That sounds too angry for me. But I actually had this big turnaround where I went, the music was so angry, and I'm not saying I still love a lot of really heavy music. I think it has its place, but I was sort of in this state of like, rah, you know, sharing song. And I went and saw Jeff Buckley play and saw him share so much emotion. And he was also an incredibly skilled musician, incredible, you know, quite heavy as well as light. And I was like, hold on, what am I doing? I'm like limiting myself to this one.
Is Jeff Buckley the guy that sung Hallelujah?
Hallelujah. Everyone would know the song Hallelujah. And tragically died at some point. But the live performance was just incredible.
Wow.
The most unforgettable thing I've ever seen. And interestingly, a few weeks before I saw Nirvana, and they were really, really good too. Don't get me wrong. But it was these two iconic music forms of the 90s that there was such a contrast. And so long story shorter, I sort of went off on a bit of a spiritual quest. I left my community of rock and rollers in Melbourne, and I found myself at a hippie festival making food in the kitchen. And every night there was this teepee, and there was a lot of ganja coming out of the teepee, and there was a lot of this singing, just this like, and I was scared. I was like, what are those? Sounds like, you know, some sort of cult in there. I'm not going in there. And several times people went, come to the teepee. I'm like, no, I'm all right. I've got to go to bed. And one night, finally, one of these people came and they dragged me along to the teepee. And it was, that time I didn't really get it. I sort of was going, okay, I was one of those people who was going, yeah, everyone's having a great time, but there's something, you know, that's not for me. And I just wasn't surrendering. I was holding on to my idea. I had all these misconceptions about what it was. But then I sort of started to quietly tinker away on the edges, because I played my own guitar with some other people, and they started saying about this song and that song. And then over a couple of years there, I gradually started to went from the person outside the teepee going to the person in the middle of the teepee going, yeah, Hare Krishna, with, 100, sometimes hundreds of people singing at these rainbow festivals, they were called. And that was 20 or so years ago. And then I sort of 25 years ago, and the songs really stayed with me. I went on to sort of have a career and created a catering business, and music sort of went to the side, and but I had all these songs. And so I made an album, not of kirtan, of all these sort of heart songs. And I was touring around with a band doing the album. And one of my friends said to me, you know some kirtan songs, don't you? Can you come to my kirtan and do some songs at my kirtan with me? It was the woman, an amazing kirtan musician called Mel Dobra. And she said, yeah. And so I came along and we did this circle. And I did a kirtan one night, and I did a gig in a venue the other night. And the experience for me, the gig in the venue where I was with my band, it was really fun. But I was like, look at me, I'm really good. I wrote these songs. Nothing wrong with that, but it's really hard work. You have to really hold up this persona. And then over here was this kirtan circle where essentially once we'd started playing a song, I didn't matter. I was holding space, but while in the process of singing, people weren't thinking about me. And afterwards, after the first one, I felt very tired, exhausted. And after the Kirtan circle, I felt really good. And it had a really big impact. I was like, I'd been making a lot of effort to try and make myself a successful musician in a certain context. And over here was this other thing. I could still be a musician, but I wouldn't have to sort of play the same game.
Wow.
And literally that was almost the last gig I ever did with my band. And again, nothing like I love, and I've got lots of friends in the music industry who are amazing, you know, performing in that way. But it just, for me, it felt like it wasn't where my work was. I felt like I had this real urge to get others to sing, not to just watch me sing, and to feel what I had felt. And that was almost 20 years ago now. So I gradually started to do an event here and there, and started to develop started writing my own kirtan songs, which was a lot of people were sort of playing the same songs. So I was like, I'm going to write my own, and yeah, and that's evolved over that 20-ish years period to me working pretty much full time, running events, workshops, teaching lessons on harmonium, guitar, voice. And a caveat though, living the dream as a musician, I do have a part-time job to help pay the bills, because it's, you know, it's not always straightforward as an artist to work, but I do feel very, very lucky. I feel like I'm one of those musicians that earns money doing what they love and feels really good about the results of what I'm doing.
Well, from my perspective, you're definitely like, when people think of Kirtan in Victoria, like they use you as like a trustworthy example of a Kirtan facilitator that embodies it and shows up. And so your impact is massive at the moment. And I feel like that story you shared of your journey is so special. And I got so much from listening to that. It was just beautiful to see like the experiential contrasts of like going to Nirvana and then seeing Jeff Buckley and then feeling the difference, and then doing your own music that was more connected, and then facilitating Kirtan and then feeling the difference. It's like presenting versus like facilitating and feeling the difference. And it's just beautiful to hear that, because I feel like everyone that listens to this are somewhat on their path, myself included, of refining the way that I show up and serve the world. And there's like nuances within my teaching and coaching where that of what you just shared was just illuminated to me more obviously from listening to you share that, of the places in my work that I can just get the experiential contrast of what feels the most resonant, fills me up the most.
Yeah, and I feel like it's really tuning into what is of service, what is the best way I can offer myself. And sometimes that doesn't look like the best financial or logical path, but you know it somewhere. You know, this is what you're meant to be doing. This is what people need you to do. And you have to learn to tune into that subtle voice.
The words,
value it.
Yeah, service. My friend Richard, who's coincidentally a year ago identified as someone that couldn't sing and spent the last year learning how to access his voice, and now sings and writes songs all the time, coincidentally for him to get some attention on this podcast. But he has this idea and broke down the word service to serve us, with the concept of when we're truly serving, it's something that is something where both parties, the people that are giving and receiving, get to receive, because it's aligned, and that resonance feels more fulfilling for the person that's giving. So it's like where we are getting served by serving the most in the way that we receive the experience. Yeah.
Oh, most definitely. And for me, each time I share an event, it feels like an act of service. that I need to tune in to the group and their needs, but it's only going to be really authentic if it serves me as well. It's not me like giving it all my energy away. What a terrible example that is to people. It's like, no, I'm going to share my connection with the divine or with beauty or with the heart. And then you're going to share yours. We're going to inspire each other. We're going to lift each other up.
The way that you've refined Ganesha Sharanam and added fall into my arms at the end, I feel like I feel so much of that service through that. So I feel it through all of it, but it particularly stands out to me when you sing that song. I feel like it's a real, I don't know if it's just subjective to me, and what I'm just like perceiving, but I really feel that you connect so much. It's like there's just so much service through that song.
And that's an interesting like sort of journey and story too, because adding that bit fall into my arms, you know, I don't do a lot of English parts in songs because I like people to not sort of get into their heads about these ideas, but this simple idea of fall into my arms, it's just people feel it. They're like, oh yeah, I want to do that. Can I please do that? Yes, let me. Completely. And I like to think of it as so being held in the bosom of the earth, or being held and supported by the goddess. And I'm very conscious of this, that I'm taking people on a journey through the songs. It's not, there's a variety of places that Kirtan can take you.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, and I want to use this point to kind of bring home the episode. I just have a feeling that something will come from it that'll be of value intuitively for everyone, which is, I'm just curious to know like one of your favorite deities or gods or mantras that you like to sing to, and to hear a little bit of the meaning that it holds for you, if you feel open to sharing that when you sing it.
Most definitely. And this one, probably a lot of people would think for me that might be Ganesha, because they are so familiar with me singing that song. And I am a huge fan of Ganesha. I used to have my Ganesha t-shirts and my Ganesha statues everywhere. But over the last few years, my appreciation has morphed a little bit, without leaving Ganesha behind, into this deep appreciation of Saraswati. And there's a few different versions of Saraswati, different songs. And the reasoning behind that is because Saraswati is very, very revered in Indian culture. And Saraswati is the goddess of dance and song and wisdom, amongst sort of many other things, but most commonly referred to as the goddess of dance and song. And in India, she is really valued because they recognize that dance and song is so important, that creativity underpins society and culture, that you can have these more masculine qualities like Shiva, who's sort of in charge of things, or, you know, might be fighting for rights, etc. But without the underpinning of dance and song and all this wisdom behind it, then is life worth living? So when we sing to Saraswati, we say, yes, it is really important for me to have creativity, for me to express myself from the heart. I don't have to work everything out, every single detail. Or if I do that, is it coming from a heartful place? Is it coming from a meaningful place? So when I sing to Saraswati, I'm really saying Saraswati, Ma. Thank you. I value creativity in my life. I invite it into my life.
Mm. That's so beautiful, son. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's been so beautiful to have you come on here, and I feel like we've covered so many different topics. And
Yes.
I know the listeners, thanks for tuning in, and really going to give you the chance to share where you'd like to direct people. And I'm going to ask you one more question after that. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on today. It's been so beautiful to hear all this.
It's great to have the opportunity to share all of these ideas and the things that run through my head. I think a lot about Kirtan, and then when I'm doing Kirtan, I forget everything.
Yeah, totally receive that and experience that with you. So if people are in Melbourne, like Sun runs a series of different workshops and events. Like you can attend a kirtan. There's kirtans like every 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks in different parts of Victoria that that Sun runs. But you also do teaching. So can you explain to people like what services you offer?
Yeah, so once a month I do a kirtan once a month at Centre of View in Paran with cacao ceremony with the amazing Grace Elizabeth. And I also do another kirtan once a month in Kundalini House in North Fitzroy. And from time to time, I run workshops. I'm running a harmonium workshop this month, for example. And I run some events and small workshops here at my place in Castlemaine, where we do like a half day or a full day immersion. With just a small group, and that's always lovely if you want to experience kirtan on another level. And then, of course, there's my teaching, which I do one-on-one over Zoom, or if you live somewhere near Castlemaine, in person. And it's interesting because I always thought teaching online might be hard, but lockdown taught us a lot of things, and it actually can be quite enjoyable to be in your own home and do your practice. So reach out to me if you're interested in learning more or about doing lessons, or if you just want to get into it.
Yeah, I totally point people who kind of saw or felt the opportunity to activate their voice in their life using singing as the opening mechanism to reach out, because that's what I did. I felt so scared of singing, and you supported me so much with that. And we did it virtually for a lot of it as well, which was really powerful.
And I do remember that moment. There's a breakthrough you had here right in this room. That was so amazing. And of course, Ryan did a one-day one-on-one workshop with me here, which was a great thing to do. Just like if you want to dive in for a day, come and do that.
We did it was an overnight one as well.
Yeah. And if you want to find me, just the usual channels, Sun_Hyland, Hyland with a Y on Instagram, and Sun Hyland Songs from the Heart on Facebook. Easy to find. There's not many Sun Hylands out there in the world, I don't think.
I love your name so much because I love the sun so much. So I've got one more question, and I'm just feeling a lot of love. I'm really appreciative of this. Like, my question is, if I was to bring someone to you and you didn't know their age, gender, religious beliefs, or anything about their life, but they were going to give you $1 million, and they are trusting that there's going to be a piece of wisdom that you share with them that's neutral, it's not tied to them in any way, what would be the thing that you would consider to be the most valuable piece of wisdom that you could offer somebody?
Breathe more. Breathe deeply. I wanted to come up with something fancier, but that's the most important thing.
Yeah. No, I feel the power of it. I'm not about the fancy life.
Breathe deeply, activate the vagus nerve, drop into the parasympathetic, let go of everything, and everything else will come.
Thank you, son.
Mm.
Thank you so much for coming on today. Listeners, thank you so much for engaging, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Beautiful, son.